What's happening, YouTube? What's going on, guys? You guys have tuned into COVID all the time, where we cover coronavirus or COVID-19 news all the time. If you want to keep up on recent developments, recent news having to do with the coronavirus, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you enjoyed today's video and all our videos, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Today we're going to be talking about an article from the San Francisco Chronicle titled "With Coronavirus Antibodies Fading Fast, Vaccine Hopes Fade Too." And essentially, we'll get into this in a second, but what the article is talking about, within the past day or two, there was a lot of talk, in the recent weeks, but especially even in the past couple days, there was a lot of talk with how promising the coronavirus vaccinations in clinical studies were looking. And a lot of people were optimistic that we might have a vaccine by August, September. And that would be really, really fast. Typically, it takes 5 years, 8 years, even as long as 14 years to develop a vaccine. And obviously, there's not necessarily always the time crunch or the money behind developing a vaccine that we have with the coronavirus, where everything's being expedited and all our efforts are being poured into this. But within the past day or two, news has come out that it doesn't appear that a vaccine is going to work. And pretty much all efforts have been kind of changed to trying to find a treatment as opposed to trying to find a vaccine. So it doesn't look like we're going to eradicate the coronavirus. Doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Doesn't look like we're going to have a vaccine. We know a lot more about this disease than we did back in, say, February. But I think, this news shows us how little we do know, because it seems like every day we're getting new and contradictory news, right? Like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Turns out that one was a lie to preserve masks for doctors. But nonetheless, different news. We heard that 6 feet was a safe distance, and then just a couple weeks later, it was, no, this virus can travel 17 feet. It's airborne. No, it's not airborne. Yes, it is airborne. It lives on surfaces for up to 17 days. Oh, nope, it doesn't live on surfaces at all. So, very complicated virus, ever-changing news. But let's get on into this article. So, disturbing new revelations that permanent immunity to the coronavirus may not be possible have jeopardized vaccine development and reinforced the decision by scientists at UCSF and affiliated laboratories to focus exclusively on treatments. Several recent studies conducted around the world indicate that the human body does not retain the antibodies that build up during infections, meaning there may be no lasting immunity to COVID-19 after people recover. And that's been kind of a hotly contested issue, right? Like, this virus has only really been around in the States till February, and I think it's only in the past month or two that we've really started to understand it. There's been a lot of talk that, you can catch it a second time. Just because you get it, you're not immune to it. It's not as if you can't catch it again. And I don't think we really have any concrete proof that you can catch it again. But because we know so little, it kind of seems like we're going on the assumption that, we're just going to play it safe and assume that you can get it again. So I guess that remains to be seen. Strong antibodies are also crucial in the development of vaccines. So molecular biologists fear that the only way to control the disease may be to treat the symptoms after people are infected to prevent the most debilitating effects, including inflammation, blood clots, and death. I just don't see a vaccine coming anytime soon, said Nevin Krogan, a molecular biologist and director at UCSF's Quantitative Biosciences Institute, which works in partnership with 100 research laboratories. People do not have antibodies, but people do have antibodies, but the antibodies are waning quickly. And if antibodies diminish, then there's a good chance immunity from the vaccine would wane too. The latest news came from scientists at King's College of London, whose study of 90 COVID-19 patients in the United Kingdom found antibodies levels peaking 3 weeks after the onset of symptoms and then dramatically declined. Potent antibodies were found in 60% of the patients, according to the study, but only 17% retained the same potency 3 months later. In some cases, the antibodies disappeared completely, said the study, which was published as a reprint Saturday, meaning it has not yet been peer-reviewed. The report is the latest in a growing chain of evidence that immunity to COVID-19 is short-lived. A Chinese study published June 18th in the Journal of Nature Medicine also showed coronavirus antibodies taking a nosedive. The study of 74 patients conducted by Chongqing Medical University, a branch of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, showed that more than 90% exhibited sharp declines in a number of antibodies within 2 to 3 months after infection. And this is really going to change, I guess, kind of how people talk about living with the virus or a new normal or a new reality. And I think a lot of people were banking on the idea that a vaccine was going to come out and, I'll just hunker down a couple more weeks. I'll just hunker down a couple more months. A vaccine is eventually going to come. And at this point, it looks like a vaccine isn't going to come. So I don't know if that's going to drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Is that going to change how you react? Like, if this thing's going to be around forever, are you going to roll the dice and decide to go out more? Are you going to start being less cautious? Curious to hear how this is going to affect your plans to continue living your life. There is still hope that the remaining antibodies will bestow some immunity, but infectious disease specialists around the world were surprised and discouraged by the rapid reduction observed in the studies. If numbers were to continue dropping after 3 months, it could mean people would be susceptible to infection by the coronavirus year after year. So this could be like a seasonal flu moving forward. So far, though, there have only been scattered reports of reinfection, and no comprehensive studies have verified that that can happen. So I know a lot of people are freaked out about this. With, I would say, a lot, if not most viruses, once you catch it, you're not going to catch it again, or at the very least, you're not going to catch the same strain again, or at the very, very least, it's not going to be as severe the second time you catch it. And a lot of people are really freaking out about this. I mean, it's very, very possible that once you catch COVID, you're not going to get it again. And there's really not any definitive news to dispute that. So I wouldn't freak out just yet. The article goes on to say experts say the disease hasn't been around long enough to determine the likelihood of contracting the disease more than once, but other kinds of coronaviruses, like those that cause the common cold, offer clues. Studies of 4 seasonal coronaviruses that cause colds showed that although people develop antibodies, the immune system's response declines over time, and people become susceptible again. Scientists suspect that the severity of a cold symptom is reduced by previous infections. So we don't know how long this lasts. It's possible if you catch the coronavirus in 2020, maybe you won't catch it in 2021, but maybe sometime in 2022 you do catch it. But hopefully at that point it'll be less severe. And that's kind of like the common cold and flus and other things we get. I think most of us, if we don't get sick once a year, maybe every 2 years, every 2 to 3 years, we wind up catching the flu or we wind up getting a bad cold. But it doesn't kill us, and hopefully we got a couple years in between these sicknesses. Waning antibodies affect vaccine development, said Shannon Bennett, the chief of science at San Francisco's California Academy of Sciences. Where natural immunity doesn't really develop or last, then vaccine programs are not likely to be easily successful or achievable. Nobody knows yet whether infections by the coronaviruses will help people's bodies resist COVID-19. Our understanding of protective immunity endangered by this virus and how it interacts with past immunity to other coronaviruses is still evolving, Bennett said. People should not presume that they have immunity. So if you have coronavirus, don't necessarily think you're in the clear. The recent findings are particularly disappointing because of the promising discovery this spring of neutralizing antibodies, the kind that attack the virus crown-like spikes and prevent them from hijacking human cells. Epidemiologists found that these neutralizing antibodies in less than 5% of COVID-19 patients, and were hoping to isolate them and use them to inoculate others, a precursor to a full vaccine. Unfortunately, the recent studies show that the super-strength antibodies also fade away. The Chinese study found an 11.7% decline in neutralizing antibodies in symptomatic coronavirus patients and an 8.3% drop in asymptomatic individuals over the 3 months. Those are the kind you want, but they just aren't sticking around, said Krogan, who is also an investor with the Gladstone Institute, a biomedical research lab in San Francisco. They just aren't staying long enough in our bodies to prevent reinfection. This is only lasting 6 weeks or 3 weeks. That's not good. Even if a vaccine were produced, infectious disease specialists say it could take years before the entire population was inoculated. If the vaccine wore off over time, periodic boosters would be needed, as with influenza shots, which is why we get seasonal flu shots, all of which emphasizes the need for effective treatments. Krogan's Quantitative Biosciences Institute, created 4 years ago, has been scouring the genome of SARS-CoV-2, the specific coronavirus that causes COVID-19, and testing in petri dishes how viral proteins interact with human cells. The idea, said Daniel Swaney, a researcher for the QBI Coronavirus Research Group, comprised of at least 40 laboratories affiliated with UCSF, is said to find ways to fight the disease once it is in the body. Our whole approach is to find what the virus is hijacking and what drugs can be developed to reverse that hijacking, said Swaney, an assistant professor of Cellular and Molecular Pharmacology at UCFS. Basically, try to take away what the virus relies on for survival so it can't rely on it anymore. One possible target for intervention is a receptor embedded in the membrane of human cells called the sigma R1, which Sweeney said the coronavirus interacts with. The sigma R1 gene plays an important role in the functioning of tissue associated with the endocrine, immune, and nervous systems. What is found is that if we use drugs to reduce the level of sigma R1 in human cells, the virus cannot replicate in those human cells, Sweeney said, adding that many other potentially influential receptors are being studied. One drug that targets sigma R1 is hydrochloroquine, which Sweeney said is problematic because it can cause heart problems. In June, the FDA withdrew emergency use authorizations for hydrochloroquine, which had previously been touted by President Trump despite the concerns. The trick, Krogan said, will be to find several drugs that work against the virus and create kind of a cocktail, like a combination of treatments HIV/AIDS patients use to control the infection. Researchers are currently testing drugs in hamsters and mice, but will soon begin doing trials in monkeys, Krogan said. He hopes to develop such a cocktail by the end of the year. It will be difficult, he admitted, because people infected with COVID-19 display so many different symptoms, some lingering long after the virus is gone. People have reported vision problems, confusion, and memory issues, cases of chronic fatigue, heart problems, lung damage, blood clotting, and neurological symptoms like dizziness and confusion have been documented in numerous patients long after the initial symptoms of COVID-19 have gone away. Epidemiologists believe the most severe are the results of an overactive human immune system response. That's what they think causes an inflammatory reaction similar to Kowalski disease that recently has been affecting children exposed to coronavirus, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Doctors at UCFS Benoit Children's Hospital have recently seen dozens of children with reddish-purple lesions on their hands and feet, known as acral perniosis. The rashes all appear weeks or months after exposure to adults with flu-like symptoms, leading researchers to believe it is an after-the-fact inflammatory reaction to COVID-19. I've never seen a virus get its fingers in so many biological processes all at once, Krogan said. It's very fascinating, horrifying, and complicated virus. The situation is not hopeless, Bennett said, because the human immune system uses both B cells, which produce antibodies, and T cells, which drive the immune response to fight off viruses. It may be that the T-cell response does not require as many antibodies to be effective, she said, and some vaccines have shown promise, including one being produced by Massachusetts biotechnology company Moderna, Inc. The Moderna vaccine provoked production of neutralizing antibodies in all 45 healthy volunteers tested. During a preliminary study released Tuesday, the study did not include a comprehensive measure of longevity, but researchers observed antibody activity for 43 days after a second injection. Whatever happens, epidemiologists hope the recent report about antibody viability put to rest the concept embraced by many young people of herd immunity, where the disease can't find any more victims because so many people have survived infections and must be immune. This attitude that if I go out there and just get exposed, get it over with, then I'll be immune, is a dangerous presumption, Bennett said. Now more than ever. So curious to hear what you guys think about this story. Do you guys have anything to add? Have you guys read any studies or seen any news articles that kind of dispute the idea that you can catch coronavirus a second time? Whatever you have to say about this, drop a comment in the comment section below. And again, if you enjoyed today's video and if you'd like to see more stories like this, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next video.